The new Lost Colony DLC map for Ark Survival Ascended will release in just under a month's time, slated to drop on the 16th of December. The map can be pre-ordered right now at a cost of $29.99 US, and you do get early access to a lot of the Lost Colony content, including new engrams, cosmetics, and creatures, which we will touch up on later in the video. There is a lot of exciting information to break down, so in this video I'll be showcasing everything we know so far about Lost Colony and what to expect on the release date. Let's get straight into it. So we'll begin with showcasing the first tease we got for Lost Colony way back in March this year, which is when the trailer dropped. Admittedly, not really giving us much to go on as we don't actually see any type of in-game gameplay or anything like that. It is an animated trailer giving us a small glimpse of Mei Yin's journey following the events of the extinction map as she arrives on Arat Prime, proceeding to battle it out with what appears to be some sort of vampiric creature. Ark Lost Colony is stated to be a full-sized canonical expansion pack featuring a new map, creatures, items, structures, and the continuation of the Ark story, which is extremely exciting as we have not had an Ark story map drop since Genesis Part 2, around a whopping 4.5 years or so ago, which is a very long time. Lost Colony will drop us into a massive occupied city packed with dangers as you become the hunted. Occupied and hunted by what is the question? Vampires, dangerous creatures, or I do find myself questioning whether or not we'll see some NPCs in the game. There is a lot of unanswered questions, which all adds to the excitement. We will gain access to powerful new kinds of character abilities, unique gear, building systems, and exotic tames. Character abilities is most likely referring to the new skill tree that we've already gained early access to after purchasing the Lost Colony DLC pass. This is where you can complete in-game quests to earn yourself skill points, proceeding to work your way through the skill tree, which ultimately upgrades your character, and even some of the skill tree sets also affect your tamed creatures. It's a pretty strong feature that honestly should just be part of the base game. Building systems could also be referred to the template hammer feature that is also included in the early access pass. This is a feature that allows you to save your builds, copy and paste them onto another map, if that is something you wanted to do, and construct them from the ground up. And you can definitely do a lot with this building template feature. I haven't really used it much, I don't really build, I'm pretty terrible at building, but on the other hand, a lot of people are talented out there, and it really is amazing what you can build if you got the right mindset for it. This build here from Freyn is probably one of the most impressive things I've seen done with the template hammer so far. So if you haven't seen this video already, I highly recommend checking it out. Link will be in the description of the video and in a pinned comment. Of course, these are just a small selection of early access features, but it is still up in the air of how much extra content there actually will be when the map drops. Going back to the trailer though, there is something I wanted to point out. Lost Colony does appear to be the first official map that is a snow-only map. Finally, my dreams have come true. And if you watch my videos, you know how much I love a good snow biome. So that alone has me super hyped for this DLC. I'm kind of hoping it'll be like the opposite of Scorched Earth. Starting out on that map is absolutely brutal. And I kind of hope it's the same for Lost Colony. I know there's a lot of people that hate Scorched Earth, but it is really a unique map as it's just a plain desert map. So I'm hoping for the same experience with Lost Colony, but with snow. As stated in the community crunch, Lost Colony will bridge the gap from extinction to Genesis Part 1, and we'll see you face down the evil lurking in Arat Prime, and connect to Ark's past and future. And everyone knows how vampires work. They bite, they infect, they pass on their powers to their victims. It is definitely one of the crazy ideas that Ark devs have come up with yet. And to be honest, even though I prefer this game how it was way back when it was just a bare bones dinosaur survival game, this will most likely be the best thing that has happened to Ark Survival Ascended since it released in October 2023. The game really has been desperately crying out for new content, so I'm all for it either way, and I cannot wait to faceplant myself into some snow. Another tease we were presented with a few months ago was this image here. Beneath the frozen wastes of Arat Prime, the true cost of element becomes impossible to ignore. Figures stalk the city, their wills bent and their bodies reshaped into living weapons. When you set foot on Arat Prime in December, you'll discover that some things are worse than extinction, and not everything that walks still breathes. So this tells me that we will have some sort of infected zombie-like creatures inhabiting Lost Colony, probably similar to the corrupted creatures from extinction, maybe even guarding a rich source of element deep down in the frozen wasteland. I'm expecting to see some sort of Horde-style defense type game, a little like orbital supply drops and element veins from extinction, but hopefully more refined and immersive, as this is a new engine and it has been 7 years since the release of Extinction in Ark Survival Evolved, so naturally the devs should have honed their game development skills over time and should be able to bring us a whole new survival experience with the addition of Lost Colony. Maybe you are looking for a server cluster to call home for the release of Lost Colony. Well, the TBS server cluster has you covered. They have a no-wipe PvP and PvE server cluster, both having boosted rates with PvE featuring a long list of TBS mods and plugins. If joining the PvP cluster, you'll be safe from harm with offline raid protection throughout the weekdays. The weekend, however, is where the fun begins for some. Not only that, but they offer custom caves and many other enjoyable features. Plus, they are giving away a whopping $500 cash prize too. What's not to like? If you are interested in joining and finding out more, their Discord servers are linked in the description of the video and in a pinned comment. Now let's get right back to the video. We now move on to the more exciting teasers which came about last week actually, with all the extra life stuff going on. Wildcard did give us a nice little insight to a new Rockwell Explorer note. That's right, Rockwell is back for Lost Colony, but not in the form of what most of us would expect. So if you haven't watched it yet, here is the Explorer note to sink your teeth into.
Who am I? Such a simple question. 3 little words. And yet, I find I am unable to summon an answer. I've awoken surrounded by metallic wreckage, the bright thunderclap of my arrival echoing away across a vast, rapidly cooling crater. From before this ruin, I remember little. I recall scattershot visions of monstrosity. I was something inhuman. And yet now I seem to be simply a man, vulnerable and exposed. Why that should surprise me, I cannot say. What was I before, and what am I now? I stumble about lost in Stygian darkness, raw flesh raked by an icy gale. A stark cold jolts something loose in my mind. Betrayal? Murder? Madness? What had I done? What had I become? A wretched being. A monster. I fall to my knees in the freezing wind. Better to let it end here with some semblance of humanity intact. I feel myself finally slipping into nothingness, as it should be, and then... No, Edmund, you won't die here. I won't let you. A renewed vigor courses through me. A will to survive. And more than that, to perpetuate. My first goal is to escape the brutal chill. Somehow I have managed to fashion a crude shelter using scavenged debris still warm from the recent impact. Crawling inside, I curl around the vital organs at my core, desperate to raise my body temperature. Only then do I allow myself to slip into feverish delirium. And finally, the peace of darkness. Until the nightmares begin.
Well, it appears Rockwell was a man back in the day, then he became a freak and went insane, transforming into an abomination in 3, 4, maybe even 5 different variants. I've kind of lost track now, to be honest. But anyway, he arrives on Lost Colony as a human, stranded out here tasting that fresh, freezing cold air of Arat Prime. What a world we live in. In Ark, crash landing, dazed and confused, slowly freezing to death, with his only hope of survival being crawling under the crash site's debris to bring up his body temperature to endure the treacherous climate of Lost Colony. Seemingly the most lost version of Rockwell we've seen yet, having no idea who he really is anymore and what his purpose in life is, and how he even ended up on Lost Colony, appearing to be conflicted as to whether he is good or bad anymore, which by the way has already been clarified clarified by Jeremy himself that Rockwell is not going to be the main antagonist of Lost Colony, which, if you didn't know already, Jeremy Stieglitz is one of the main devs at Wildcard. The keyword in this sentence for me is main. It could mean one of two things really. He is still one of the antagonists but not the main threat anymore, or he is not an antagonist at all and is now trying to make amends for all the evil he inflicted in the Ark world previously. If you are into this Ark lore, it's all exciting stuff really. It has been 8 years since we saw Rockwell in this state, so it's going to be very interesting to see which path he takes this time. Will he return to his menacing ways, or will he pull a U-turn and potentially even become a protagonist? Only time will tell. I highly doubt he will return to being a good guy, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not really too focused on the Ark lore to be honest, but it will be cool to finally have a new story to follow within the game, as it has been a very long time. Speaking of story, Ark Survival Ascended does add the paid story DLC series pack known as Bob's Tall Tales, which apparently is at 50% off right now as of recording this video, which is a pretty good price as it includes a lot of content. This content takes us on a journey through Bob's true adventures, who is voiced by Carl Urban, by the way. Big fan of the Dread film he starred in back in 2012, by the way. I actually watched this film twice when I first bought it, because that is how good of an action film it is. Anyway, the pack includes 3 DLC packs for each of the 3 story maps: Scorched Earth, Aberration, and Extinction. The Frontier Western themed pack for Scorched Earth, which is by far my favourite, the Steampunk Ascended for Aberration, and finally the Wasteland War for Extinction, where Mad Max was definitely a huge influence there. Once ascending from Extinction, after defeating the King Titan, we are presented with a Bob's Tall Tales DLC storyboard animation, and at the end of that states to be continued in Bob's True Tales, which so far we have seen nothing about, but this does mean that this DLC franchise will be continuing with further story maps. This could be introduced with Lost Colony, or it could be introduced later down the line with Genesis Part 1. It does seem fitting to release it alongside Lost Colony, as if they do follow suit and include 3 packs, then that would perfectly cover Lost Colony, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. So I guess we'll soon find out in a month's time. And of course, if you own the Lost Colony Early Access Pass, then you'll partly know what is already coming with the drop of Lost Colony on December the 16th. I just wanted to quickly go over the rest of the features included. You'll gain access to the building templates and skill tree, which we've already covered. The exotic creatures are somewhat referring to the 4 Drakelin variants, which is a small dragon-like creature that sits on your shoulder, acts as a flamethrower, and rewards the survivor with a chest of ridiculously high-quality loot. The Veilwyn is the second creature, which acts as a survivor companion, just like the armored doggo from Bob's Tall Tales Wasteland War. A man's best friend, have you will. Then we have the Elder Claw, a big, bad fantasy bear-like creature, similar to the Diabear in nature, but with many different qualities and much stronger abilities and stats. It will be interesting to see what the Elder Claw's natural habitat will look like on Lost Colony, as it does appear to be an all-snow map. And finally we have the new Ossidon. This behemoth made its way into Ark on the 18th of this month, stated to temporarily be spawning in the cold biomes of Ragnarok, the Center, and Valgero, but only until Lost Colony drops on the 16th of December, which is then said to be only spawning on Lost Colony as a map-exclusive creature. Breeding is temporarily disabled, which will remain this way until the release of Lost Colony, where at the start of Lost Colony's launch, tamed Ossidons will not be transferable to any Lost Colony servers. I do believe the rest of the creatures included in the pass will still spawn on the other maps they already spawn on. The Ossidon, on the other hand, will be removed after the map drops in December. I am desperately hoping that there is many more map-exclusive creatures that we haven't seen yet on Lost Colony. It is a bit of a shame that they keep releasing these creatures early, as it kind of ruins the surprise when the map finally drops, though I do still believe that there will be new creatures to encounter there that we haven't seen before in the game. So the next section comes from the Ras Clark, Aaron Longstaff and friends live stream from the Extra Life last week, where Ras had the chance to pick the brain of Jeremy Stieglitz, diving into a written interview with him, where he reveals some very exciting information regarding Lost Colony and the future of Ark. So here we go. Regarding narrative as to how Rockwell arrives on Lost Colony and how things will tie into Ark 2, Jeremy says that we felt that there were several big gaps that we wanted to explain, how Rockwell gets onto the Genesis Seed ship, and what what amount of humanity is left within the character prior to the events of Genesis, clearing up and expanding on various relationship details pertaining both to the plot of Arc 2 and to also include more character stories from the animated series, and finally setting up Arc 2 by carrying over certain post-extinction developments which play out in Lost Colony into Arat Prime, and to also explore Arat in this expansion, boasting an overall polar theme to it, and ultimately wanting to center the developments about what's going to happen in Arc 2. Ras then asks, being a perfect fit to explain several unanswered key moments for several of Arc's characters, specifically Diana and Mei Yin, do you feel this closes their storylines, or perhaps gives weight to Rockwell's and his ambitions in the events of Genesis? Jeremy says it will close storylines for some characters and open up new storylines for others, further exploring the relationships between the various main characters, including Rockwell's motivations, as well as illuminating what occurred in Arat around the development of the Siege ship. Much of this has to do with setting up the future stories, while a substantial portion is also about filling in the gaps and narrative things we wanted to clarify before we move into the next phase of Arc. Ras then asks as to how the storylines will be told through a player's in-game experience. Will it be through trailers and other means, or will it be through explorer notes just like every other Arc map? Jeremy says that storytelling mechanics of Lost Colony will be a mix of different visuals to follow throughout, including traditional fully voiced explorer notes and dossiers to find out in the wild, highlighting focus between the main characters and their relationships, Rockwell's motivations, and what exactly happened on the Siege ship we find ourselves stuck on in Genesis, while also clarifying what's happened to characters leading up to Genesis Part 1, which from a story perspective was extremely confusing to me, all retrieved from Engram Codex throughout previous Arc narrative events, playing out in a JRPG style conversation, probably something similar to the animated cutscenes we see in the Bob's Tall Tales. Full CGI sequences using Unreal Engine's metahuman technology, which allows for detailed performance capture character animation. This is what you see here in many of the Arc's trailers and cutscenes. This one here in specific had Madeline Madden on stage, suited up playing Helena Walker, and Ailey Cravallo, I probably butchered that name, performing Mika, which of course really brings the characters to life within the game. Also going on to say that there will be voice in-head narrative too, which is most likely something like the HLNA robot, which aids you through your journey within the Genesis simulation. Jeremy also goes on to say that some of the methods could work better than others, and that they'll be heavily influenced on what players like or don't like, and also went on to say that Gareth Coker is returning with a huge 75 minutes or so of new hard-hitting, heart-pumping Arc soundtracks for Lost Colony, which I cannot wait for. You really cannot beat Arc soundtrack. I don't think Gareth has ever produced a track that didn't pack a punch. Ras goes on to ask, with Unreal Engine 5 seemingly paving the way for both of these CGI animations and now years of experience under the belt, have you discovered new engine features to inspire how new maps like Lost Colony can rejuvenate Arc's traditional level design? Jeremy says that they are aiming to build a large city, featuring dynamic enemy outposts throughout for players to raid and in other cases defend. This clarifies and indicates that there will really be NPCs in the game, and NPC world-style events within Lost Colony after all. Also going on to say that everything from construction and detail within an urban area, in brackets very different to the scale and design of Extinction Sanctuary, was something new to tackle and was much more manageable with the power and tools of Unreal Engine 5. Also emphasizing that Lost Colony will include enhanced weather systems and various types of snow interaction, which sounds very cool to me, especially being such a snow biome fanatic. I cannot wait to get a max of 20 FPS on Lost Colony. Jokes aside, he does say it is like nothing else we've seen to date. Ras then goes on to ask about Wildcard stating to be looking to adopt Arc 2 features into ASA's development. Having seen a couple so far like templates, do you plan on introducing any more with the arrival of Lost Colony? Jeremy says templates is indeed an Arc 2 feature that we backported with many changes to Lost Colony. The skill tree was also another one. Of course, another is the concept of an opposing force raiding NPC bases, however a much more simplified type in Lost Colony. This is really exciting stuff though. I've always loved having more PvE based style minigames and events in the world of Arc, Extinction with the OSDs and element veins, and Genesis Part 1 with the missions. Although not my favourite, I did enjoy some of the mission types, so in theory this should be a really fun thing to dive into for PvE and PvP alike. Not really sure how it's going to work in PvP, but that'll be interesting in itself. Hopefully there's a lot of loot for the loot goblins to gobble up. But oh yeah, it's going to be very exciting to see how NPC raiding will work in the world of Ark, and I really cannot wait to see it come to the game. Ras proceeds to ask, will Lost Colony perhaps begin the building blocks for future maps? Jeremy answers that Lost Colony is more story-oriented to anything we've done before, even more ambitious than Genesis Part 2, and that Lost Colony serves as a testing ground to see how far they can take the Ark narrative techniques going forward, being more refined than anything they have tackled before in Ark. Ras then follows up with, does Lost Colony plan to perhaps influence the development of Genesis 1 and 2? Jeremy says Gen 1 and Gen 2 will be fairly similar to how we approached the prior map upgrades. The maps themselves will be visually overhauled along with some functional refinements and new creature quality of life as we've done with each map release. But then does emphasize that there will be one key difference. Gen 1 will now have a map-wide water biome. That's right, which therefore means the map will inevitably receive massive changes over its survival evolved version. It will be interesting to see how the rest of the map will intertwine with this new version of the ocean biome, but damn, this is massive news for Genesis. Does this mean that there will be no separate map sections at all to represent the biomes? Will Genesis finally become one standalone map where you don't have to teleport into death every time you switch biomes? Clearly we have seen that giant maps are possible with the addition of maps like Austraeus, which admittedly is 70% ocean, but hey, this could still be a possibility. There's a lot to look forward to here, that's for sure. In relation to that, he also does go on to say that Genesis Part 2 will also have a map-wide space biome too. So I'm going to assume that the small section of space that you can traverse through to make it from one half of the ship to the other will be completely changed, and there will be an entire space biome to explore. Once again, it's going to be very interesting to see how it all works. Will the asteroids still cycle at midnight of every day? Can we fully explore space and find many new POIs within space itself? Who knows? There is so many questions to ask, and I'm super excited about it all. But I will admit, both Gen 1 and Gen 2 are my least favourite story maps, but as they are seemingly undergoing huge changes, they might become some of my favourite maps from here on out. I think it's safe to say that Gen 1 and Gen 2 are going to receive the most map changes of any map to date. Oh, it's so exciting. He also adds that these new huge areas will aid in supporting the new Bob's True Tales expansion pack, which we mentioned earlier in the video, but does say that it will be CGI oriented, canonical, true to life on Ark 2's world of Arat Prime. So maybe it will release with Lost Colony after all. The pack will add major features just like the Bob's Tall Tales packs, and does include new kinds of vehicular content, which hopefully is more polished than the battle rigs, aka the Tech ATV Mark II. Not really a fan of those, but they were a cool idea, I guess. Also clarifying that they are geared up for the next ASA full map expansion pack, and that more will come in the future. So to finish off, Ras asks if Lost Colony will set up new stories to be answered later in ASA's development that haven't yet in Genesis 1 and 2. Jeremy clarifies that by saying Lost Colony will definitely set up what's coming next, linking the cast, characterizations of the game, and animated series more closely together. After reaching the end of the interview, it is evident that there is a lot to look forward to. Lost Colony does have potential to give us more story content to enjoy further down the line with Ark Survival Ascended. I did also want to point out that Ark 2 was actually mentioned numerous times, so I guess as of now they still have plans to make it, even if we almost never hear them publicly talk about Ark 2. Of course it won't be for many years yet, but at least the idea is still being mentioned here and there. Big shout out to Ras for the interview, and to Jeremy for taking the time to answer some exciting questions, which do really give us a nice vision of what Ark's future is going to look like. I'm really excited for it all, and I honestly cannot wait to experience the new and the old map installments all over again. And this final section is something I really wanted to include here in this video. It is not technically official news, but it's also something I'm really excited to see come to the game that is related to Lost Colony, in a way, which is these Lost Knight skins, shared by Martin Gracia, who is part of the dev team that brought us the Sulfur Titan Premium mod. So if going by the high quality of the Sulfur Titan mod, these skins are going to be awesome. And as expected, they look absolutely beautiful. It does state that these are saddle cosmetics, which is something I've always wanted to see more of in the game, as I do feel like there aren't enough cool saddle skin cosmetics out there, but these saddle skins are looking badass. Look at that fairy skin, man. Whoa. And the Stego, and the Rex, all of it looks amazing. And who knows, maybe there's more to see than what's on show here. Talk about suited and booted, ready for battle. Fingers crossed they will be compatible with official servers, because that'll be awesome. These skins are definitely going to be one to look out for. Anyway, that is going to be the end of the video for today. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it helpful. And if you did, please don't forget to like, comment, share around, and subscribe for more. It would really help me out, and I really appreciate it. I had a 75,000 sub goal in mind at the start of 2025, thinking there was no way I'd reach that number by the end of the year, but here we are with only 900 or so subs left to go. And it's still mind-boggling to me that you guys enjoy my videos so much, and I just wanted to thank you all for the continued support. It really means the world to me. And with all that being said, I'll catch you all on the next one. Take care. Goodbye.